Welcome to Financial Planning Explained. I'm your host, Mike Menninger, certified financial planner, owner and founder of Menninger Associates Financial Planning. Pleased to have as my co-host today, Kyle Ryan, also a certified financial planner, as well as a chartered financial consultant. Kyle, thanks for joining me again today.
Thanks for having me.
So we are discussing Social Security, and this is our second episode of what appears to be going to be a three-part episode. As I pointed out at the beginning of episode one, or part one, is we did this 2 years ago. And when we did this 3 years ago, it was one of my earliest episodes. And not that anything has really changed with the Social Security system itself and its benefits. A lot of things have changed since I did this episode 3 years ago. Number one, I did it by myself as a soliloquy. Today I'm doing it with Kyle, which we're able to share some of our experiences to help solidify. I mean, you can hear it, but we're going to try to use some real life examples to help better understand tricks of the trade, so to speak.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Experience is the best way to learn.
That's right. So what we did in episode one is we talked about the history of Social Security, when it started, et cetera, the tax withholding history, the concept of full retirement age and primary insurance amount, and the types of benefits. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pick up and spend some time today talking about the types of benefits, but getting into the hood and looking at it more deeply. And in doing so, we're going to be throwing out case studies and stuff that we've done, which is undoubtedly going to take us into a third episode, at which point we're going to continue of when should I apply, and then lastly, the taxation of Social Security, which is incredibly important, which changes a whole lot of thinking as it pertains to, there's a lot of what we talk about that because of the taxation of Social Security, people find themselves in a higher marginal tax bracket in retirement than
they are when they're working.
That's right, which is, goes against conventional thinking.
And I have a feeling the answer to when should I apply to Social Security might be the same answer as most financial planning questions if you've seen the show before.
2 words.
It depends.
It depends. Absolutely. It applies to so many different things in the financial planning world. It's the answer to almost every question.
Yeah.
So I created a chart. For those of you who are viewing can see the chart. This is a beautiful thing. Okay. Unfortunately, for those of you who are audio only and listening to it as a pure podcast, then we're going to do the best we can to explain what is on this slide. I developed this specifically for the show a few years ago, as well as, we do this seminar. We haven't done it. We're going to do it again soon. Haven't done it in a couple of years, but we'll do that again. And this kind of shows the benefits, the benefits of retirement. And so what it does is here it shows what the full retirement age is. Okay, and assuming the age of 67, because that's for anybody born in 1960 or later. Same thing applies to people born between 1955 and 1959. Very simple. 1955, your full retirement age was 66 and 2 months. And born at 56 is 66 and 4 months. Born in 57 is age 66 and 6 months, 66 and 8, 66 and 10, and then 67 for everyone after that. So with the full retirement age comes a whole lot of things. We talked about it's the baseline for all calculations, but now let's talk about what you get paid, okay? So if one decides to take it early, basically what happens is they get a reduction in their income.
Yep.
But the second thing that happens is it's considered to be early retirement, which means you have income limitations.
Yes.
Because you can't just decide, hey, I'm going to collect Social Security and continue working. And we know we have a lot of case studies that we deal with all the time on that note. So what happens here is they take your full retirement age, and if you wanted to collect it early, no big deal. It's a reduction of 0.5% per month for 3 years. Now you take 3 years times 0.5%. Basically what it is 20% reduction in 3 years. Then for the next 2 years prior, it's 5/12%, which means it's 5% per year for 2 years. So if your full retirement age is age 67 and you decide to take it at age 62, it's a 30% reduction or 70%.
Yeah.
Now, this is where people have questioned us, and this goes back to what we talked about in the prior episode about making sure you realize that if you're looking at your Social Security chart, age 67 assumes you're making this amount of money all the way to 67.
Yep.
Because if you take a look at yours, you're going to find that on your 62, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, this is less than 70%. Why is that?
And yeah, just using easy numbers, right? If your full retirement age benefit, you're looking at your statement, you're 62 years old, it says it's $1,000. Sweet, I can get $700 today. Not the case, right? Because like you said, it assumes that you're working still until you're 67.
Correct. And you'll also see on your statement, so wait a minute, you said 70%, why is it 672 or something like that? And that is why. Okay, so, and then if you decide to delay your retirement or collecting Social Security, you get 8% per year, also 0.2% per month, all the way up until age 70. And let me tell you something. After age 70, it doesn't go up anymore. And you'd be surprised how many people wait beyond age 70, the uninformed. Wait beyond age 70 thinking that it's continuing to go up, but it's not.
It's just sitting there collecting no end.
Right, it's lost money.
Yep.
If you were getting $3,000 a month come age 70 and you don't take it 1 year later, it's still $3,000.
Yeah. Now you will be able to get a lump sum benefit of your prior, but I'd rather have the money as I earn it.
What do you mean lump sum benefit?
If you're a year late, they'll pay you what you're owed.
6 months.
Okay.
Don't go backwards 6 months.
Okay, that's right. The retro benefits.
They'll only go backwards 6 months. But still, the long and short of it, it's not going up, and you can't get it all back. You can only get 6 months. If you're actually after full retirement age, you can go backwards 6 months within the full retirement age. But again, the big difference here is if you retire prior to full retirement age, you have income limitations, and I'll give you.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you retire any time before your full retirement age, which we're going to use 67 for now, but say you're under 67, you want to retire and you want to start taking Social Security benefits, you're limited. If you're going to do, I'm going to retire from my full-time job, or I'll go to part-time hours, you're limited as to how much money you can earn. Earned income is the really important thing here. You can only earn up to $1,860 a month or up to $22,320 a year. And they look at it the first year you retire on a monthly basis, the first year that you actually collect your Social Security.
If you have, they'll actually look at the full 22,000, but if you're working a $80,000 a year job for the first 6 months, you made 40 grand.
Yep.
What do you do? Well, that's where they apply the monthly.
The monthly amount where you only have to, and if you do earn more than the limit that they give you, they reduce your benefit $2 for every $1 that you go, or excuse me, $1 for every $2 that you go over. So clearly you can see that there is a limitation if you were to take it early as to how much income you can earn. There's another niche rule, and I've got an interesting story about this. There's a niche rule about the year you turn your full retirement age. So say it's January 1st, you're 66 years old, and on July 1st, halfway through the year, you turn 67. You're not limited in that 6 month period to that same roughly $1,000 number. They actually give you a different number. It's $59,520, which is roughly $59,500. So you can earn up to $59,500 in 2024 up until your birthday. So if you turn 67 in March, you've got that window. If you turn it all the way in December, sorry, that's what you're limited to.
Yeah,
right? And so that's just how that works. My brief little story about this is if you're ever questioned Social Security's rules, right? Because again, you can get into a lot of niche and complex rules about Social Security, but if you ever had a question about it, what's the first place you'd call?
You'd call Social Security.
You'd probably call Social Security. That's
exactly
where I would call too.
Right.
So the majority of calls that I've had, because I've called Social Security a number of times with clients, asking questions, what have you, to understand how this all works, always go to the horse's mouth, right? Because they're going to be the one who has the answers.
Think.
I have advised a client before because his birthday was roughly around the middle of the year. And I know you know who this client is. Roughly around the middle of the year, his income wouldn't have surpassed the limitation of $59,520. So I'm like, we're collecting Social Security in January. There's not going to be an issue. He's like, all right. He calls Social Security to start collecting his benefit. Person tells him, whoa, you're limited to $1,860 a month. You don't get that $59,000 and some change number. That's not how that works. He calls me with Social Security on the lines like, Kyle, you told me this is how it worked. Is this right? Are you wrong? And I'm having a red face moment. Social Security's on the line saying this. I'm like, I am 99.9% sure that point one is that Social Security's telling me it's wrong. But this point of the story is, if you ever get something from Social Security that you think might be questionable, what I did, just ask for a second opinion from another one of the reps there. And a manager comes on and thankfully cleared my name on it and said I was right about the year you turn full retirement age, you have an increased limit before they start taking away your Social Security benefit. And the last point of that, if you do go above that $59,520 number in your income while you're collecting Social Security before your birthday, the amount that they reduce is $1 for every $3 you go over.
Right, in that final year. That's
in
correct.
That final year. Yep.
So I have another story to you. and we know there's been more than just a couple, but I had one in a particular instance with a survivor's benefit. And she contacted Social Security herself. I said, do me a favor, call Social Security and you have to set an appointment. You have to set an appointment for a spousal benefit. So she contacted them, told them the situation, and they told her, you can't collect the spousal benefit. You can only, it was a survivor benefit. And they said, you can't do that. You can only collect the spousal benefit of 50%. So she hung up the phone, set the appointment date, called me up and said, Mike, what Social Security told me was I can't do what you said I can do. Well, needless to say, it made me scrambling through. I'm like, but I thought I was right.
Yeah.
I looked at all my sources. I'm like, I'm right.
But Social Security
said no. So here's the kicker. She picked up the phone a week or so before her appointment to confirm her appointment. The person on the line said, you can't collect the survivor benefit. You can only collect the spousal benefit. At which point she told me that. And I'm like, I'm going with you.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going with you. Lo and behold, I go with her. The lady introduced herself. Hi, I'm Mrs. Smith. And I see, according to the records, you were told that you can't, you can.
Yep.
You're like, whew.
The people in the appointments know their stuff.
Yes, the people in their appointments know their stuff. And, if you have to kick it up to a supervisor level, that's fine too.
Yeah.
We're going to get into a whole bunch of nuances when it comes to strategizing. Because right now, just the statement of facts, full retirement at age 67 or whatever yours might be. But at this point, most people are at the 67 or 66 and change, okay? Because anybody who is eligible for age 66 is already 70.
Yes.
So they're
already on.
That rabbit has already left the snake. So there's a few that are still under 70, but what we're going to do is we're going to talk more about some of the other benefits as well as some nuances associated with taking it early on a full retirement benefit when we come back. So stay tuned. We'll be back with you in just a few moments.
Do you keep up regularly with your investments? Where exactly are your hard-earned dollars going? Are you financially prepared for an emergency?
I'm Mike Menninger, founder of Menninger Associates Financial Planning. We believe that education and knowledge are powerful, and we want our clients to understand why we are making the recommendations that we make. It's your money, and you deserve to know where it's going, because it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep. So call us today to discuss your financial concerns. Welcome back to Financial Plan and Explain. I'm Mike Menninger, your host, and co-host Kyle Ryan. And we're continuing on part 2 of a 3-part episode on Social Security, expanding a little bit on the planning perspective of it. What we spoke about in the first part was just the history of Social Security, the full retirement age, primary insurance amount, types of benefits. In the first segment of this particular episode, we really got into the whole how it works from the full retirement age, early, taking a penalty for taking it early, and how much it increases if you take it later, and the income limitations, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that I want to add to that that we thought about during the break was that this happens. People retire early and say, I'm done, I'm not working anymore. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 or 5 months later, they get called back, they get another opportunity to work, consulting, whatever, and they're like, uh-oh, I'm blowing through the $18.60 a month or the 22 and change a year. Yeah. What do I do now? If you're pulling Social Security early, you have one opportunity for a do-over, and that is within 12 months of the time that you began to collect, at which point you could say, oops, do-over, and what they'll do is they'll make it as if you didn't collect it, but you got to give it all back.
Yes.
Okay? And so it used to be not the 12 months, and what people would do is they would collect it, make money on their money, and say at the end of, oh, yeah, guys, I'm going to change my mind, give the money back, but they earned money on it the whole time.
Very interesting.
So that, well, you know what?
Play the
The
game.
government got smart on that, okay? Nothing like playing the game, and I am certainly a game player.
Yep.
All right. But anyway, let's talk about the spousal benefit, okay? The spousal benefit, to be clear, as opposed, differentiated from the survivor benefit, okay? The spousal benefit gives the spouse of an insured worker, insured meaning they have Social Security, to be able to collect 50% of the spouse's benefit.
Yep.
However, the spouse has to be collecting.
Yes.
Oh, that's a minor problem there.
Yeah, it can be.
And it's capped at 50%. So take the example of the one spouse as a primary insurance amount, his FRA amount is $2,000. Spouse decides to retire, and now the other spouse wants to collect their benefit. So what Social Security will do is they'll award her the higher of either her benefit or half of the spouse's. So if her benefit is, say, $700 and 50% of the spousal benefit, or the spousal benefit is 50%, it's $1,000, automatically awarded the $1,000. Okay, they give you the highest.
Interesting how it plays out, because this is why we wanted to separate retirement benefit, spousal benefit, because you still, in this instance, spouse number 2 has a $700 retirement benefit. They will receive the $700 retirement benefit and then a spousal benefit on top of it to get to 50% of that.
Correct.
Other spouses. For
Correct.
retirement.
That's a good point. And especially if it's early, if they're
Yes.
taking it early.
Yes.
Okay, because if they're taking it early, the calculations of a reduction are different. It's 25/36% per month,
Yep.
as opposed to 5 nights. Not that much different, but different enough that the calculations are slightly different if you're looking at it and say, hey, Mike, what the heck's going on here? This doesn't add up.
Yep.
Okay, so what if someone's divorced?
If someone's divorced, it's very interesting. You have to be, if you are divorced, you can actually collect on your ex-spouse's Social Security record. I'm sure we have numerous case studies where we talk to someone, they're like, really? Yes, you can actually collect off your ex-spouse's record. You have to be divorced for more than 10 years. You have to have been married for more than 10 years. You have to have been divorced for 2 years.
Right.
And you cannot be remarried to be able to collect off your ex-spouse's record.
Correct. And so that opens the door. And by the way, you know, I could have been married to 3 different women, each for 10 years. All 3 of them are allowed to collect a spousal benefit off of mine.
Correct.
And what's also different, if you're divorced, you don't have to wait for me to begin collecting.
Yes. And other than that, it works. It has the same benefit structure as your own retirement benefit in that you can take it as early as 62. You can't delay it past 67 like you can, but you can take it early and get a reduction, or you can wait until your own age, 67, and then get the full retirement amount. It does adjust based on when you take the spousal benefit.
Right, and it adjusts, as I pointed out, a little differently. Instead of 5 nights a month, it's 25/36.
Yep.
Okay, so that is an important thing to take into consideration. And we've also had it where a spouse began to take theirs early at age 62. Okay, and she was collecting it for about 2 or 3 years, her own benefit. And then her spouse retired. And once her spouse then began to take it, that was the example where she had her benefit, and then she was able to get the 50% of the spouse's, then reduced by the 25/36 per month. It was a hairy calculation, but if you scratch it down on paper, it's not as bad as it sounds. basically you just find out from Social Security what would be my benefit.
Yes, it's easier that way.
Right, exactly. And by the way, for what it's worth, if you're collecting your own benefit, you don't actually even have to call Social Security. You can apply for your own benefit online. It's that if you're applying for a benefit that involves your spouse, whether it be a spousal benefit or a survivor benefit, then you have to actually contact Social Security. Sometimes you can make, ever since COVID, they've been doing phone appointments, but prior to COVID, you had to go in.
Yes, and disability benefit is similar in that you have to prove you're disabled. You can't do it simply online. It's much more difficult to get approved for a disability benefit. And just to kind of cover entirely the disability benefit, if you do become disabled and you have to take it at any point, you receive what would have otherwise been your full retirement age, even if you take it early due to a disability.
Right.
There's no penalty for that, just to kind of cover disability benefits.
Right, and so you also have limitations as to what you can make, and those limitations are not the same as a early retirement worker. It's actually less. But then what happens is that if you're on disability, Social Security disability, basically you need to be able to demonstrate permanent disability.
Yes.
And for over 12 months.
Yes, and you
Okay.
have to, sometimes they'll make you continue to prove it. You can't just...
Right.
Yes.
Right, and
Until
to
you're
your point,
67.
it's very difficult to get.
Yes.
Okay, and I would say it's more common than not that they disapprove you the first time.
Yeah, I don't remember the statistics, but I know it's well over 50% do not get approved.
Get declined, it's correct. But one of the things that I've also understood is that as you get closer and closer to full retirement age,
They're more likely to approve
correct,
it. You're
because
less of a
the-
liability.
right,
Yeah,
and the
liability.
amount of money that it's costing
Yep.
the government is not as much. If I'm collecting full retirement at age 50, dude, they're having to pay me for 17 years.
Yes.
If I'm collecting at age 62 or 63, it's only a little bit more than I would have already collected, so it's not as substantial. So we talked about disability, and let's talk about it. Well, we didn't talk about it. We weren't planning to talk about it. So let's talk about survivor benefits. So if a spouse dies, they get the whopping death benefit of how much?
255.
All 255 of it.
Yeah.
And actually what we're finding is that we're contacting clients and saying, hey, it's kind of tough to say, hey, pick up the phone and call Social Security. But what we're finding is that funeral homes are doing that
Yes.
on behalf of
Yes.
the deceased.
I've noticed that as well.
So, this way they'll discontinue, so they notify Social Security, at which point Social Security will then provide the death benefit and then will also go through the mechanism to give them the higher of the two.
Yep. I wonder if that's a law or not, so that you can't have people collecting on a dead person's Social Security. I don't know.
Well, it's a law that you can't.
Yeah.
But what does that stop? So what happens with a survivor benefit is very different. It's unique, okay? Because of the fact that it depends on what your age is and it depends on the age of the decedent.
Yeah.
So as a general rule, we'll start with you get your the decedent, their Social Security. But it also depends on if they're beginning to take it already. Have they not taken it? Have they received their full retirement benefit or what? So, tricky, but let's assume for one moment your spouse dies before full retirement age and hasn't begun collecting it. The surviving spouse is eligible to collect the full retirement age benefit.
Yep.
So we'll use our $3,000 benefit. If the surviving spouse is that benefits $3,000, they can begin taking it. If the person who died was, say, age 68 or 69, but still hasn't collected Social Security, it's whatever that benefit would have been.
Yes. Because it could have increased.
Correct.
And they never touched
That's
it.
correct.
Specifically, never touched it.
Correct.
Yep.
And if they already began Social Security, no matter when, then the surviving spouse would get that amount.
Yep.
So in other words, if the decedent decided to collect their Social Security at, say, 64, the surviving spouse would get that particular benefit.
Yep. So passing away at age 70 and collecting it at the same time is not as useful as passing.
Right. So the one thing that is different about this benefit is that the surviving spouse is actually allowed to begin collecting it at age 60.
Yes, as opposed to 62.
Correct. And instead of it being a reduction of benefits of 30% to 70, if you begin to collect it at age 60, it's 71.5%, which, by the way, why they come up with this 1.5. It's like RMDs are 70.5, 59.5 when you can begin to collect, when you can take stuff. Oh my God, the half.
Actuaries.
Where in the world they come up with these halves is incredibly beyond me. But you get 71.5%, which it's a straight line. So that means if you 1/3 of the way between age 60 and 67, you decide to begin collecting it then, it's 1/3 of the way from 71.5 to 100.
Yep.
At which point you collect that and you're good. Now here's an interesting trick. Let me back off before that. And you, just as if you were retired, you have the same income limitations. So in other words, you can only make your $1,800 and whatever a month,
Yes. Yep.
and you have the same income restrictions, all right? But what's really cool about the survivor benefit is that if my spouse was $3,000 at full retirement age and I was $3,500, the immediate knee-jerk reaction is, well, which one do I take? But here's what gives me the ability to collect 71.5% of my my late spouse at age 60, begin to collect that benefit, and once I turn 70, I can flip the switch and go on to mine.
Yep.
Okay? Which, by the way, that example that I used earlier where Social Security gave bad information, that's what we were doing. She got laid off at age 63. Her husband of divorce passed away.
Interesting, yep.
So she collected his, and in 2 years she turned 70, and her benefit is going to jump dramatically. Now, what's interesting about this, if you think about an individual's benefit, let's take a look at her as an example. And we'll talk a little bit more about break even later, but all of the calculations of how much you get from Social Security as well as the reductions are based upon sort of actuarial calculations.
Yeah, life expectancy.
And so therefore 60, 62, 65, 67, and 70 are theoretically the same.
Yep.
So if that's the case and my age 62 and 70 are the same, then if I'm collecting a survivor's benefit from age 60 to 70,
And allowing yours to grow.
dude, that's free money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? And so if you can work that, it's a beautiful thing to work.
And it used to, this is very unique to survivor's benefit, but it actually used to not be unique. It's not a rule anymore, but you used to be able to do what's called a file and suspend. If you're born in 1954 or earlier, you can still do it, but it's not relevant now.
Right.
But you used to be able to take your own benefit and allow your spouses who's still alive to continue to grow. And it was just a fantastic planning strategy
Right.
they used to be able to use that now you can't use anymore. So that's why it's very unique to a survivor benefit. Talk about a planning opportunity, right? You start taking your survivor's benefit, allow yours to grow. Like you said, free growth, if you will, of your own benefit.
Yeah, we've used that for a few folks.
Absolutely.
And they were born in 1953 and made it. And other ones born in 48 and 47.
Yeah.
But because of the fact that most people are over the age of 70.
If you're born in 1954.
Right, you're right,
70.
you're over. So exactly. So those days are over, and it kind of expired that particular thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up and talk about when should I apply. And we're going to save that for the third episode. We're going to talk about when should I apply in the first segment, and in the second segment, we're going to talk about the taxation of Social Security benefits. So I hope you learned something today. Stay tuned because we're going to be coming back next week with part 3 episode. So thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.